Thursday morning, my friends. I'm Pastor Ben Hayes from First Baptist Church, Dadeville, Alabama, bringing you our thought for the day on this Thursday morning. And I hope you're having a great morning. I hope you've gotten started well. Copy of the Word, spend some time with the Lord, maybe on the front porch, just rejoicing in what God has given to you and the blessings He's poured out upon you. But remember yesterday, as we get into the study this morning, we're in 1 Timothy chapter 2 today, finish up chapter 1. But remember yesterday, we were talking about church discipline. And church discipline is important, rarely practiced, but it is important that we stand firm on the holiness of the church and make sure that people understand that they are under the authority of the church when it comes to their behavior and the way that they live their lives. That's what Paul's talking about here at the end of chapter 1. Then look at chapter 2. He starts off with the word therefore. Now you understand what that word therefore is there for? It means based on everything that I've just said, this is what you need to be doing. So based on the fact that we know the law was good, and as long as we use it lawfully, we know that it's all about grace and mercy. We know that we have to be responsible and follow the practice of church discipline. Paul says, therefore, I exhort, first of all, that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men. Wow. Now think about this. This word, I exhort, this idea this is encouraging, admonishing, instructing, teaching, all of that crammed into that one little word. It's all about this is not just a recommendation. It's not just a suggestion. I am strongly saying this is what you need to be doing. Now what does he say you need to do? He says, first of all. Now again, he doubles up on that. Before anything else, before you do anything else in this life, he says, first of all, that you make supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks for all men. In other words, pray. Now listen to what he says. There's several words here that have to do with prayer. Supplications, of course, are when we come to the Father and we pray about the needs around us, our needs, other people's needs. When we do prayer meeting on Wednesday night, we hear all of these prayer requests, and we pray for those people. We pray that God would heal them. We pray that God would bless them. Those are supplications. Prayers are just general prayers and talking with God. See, when we think about prayer, we often define it as just talking to God, but actually it's talking with God. It's a two-way communication. It's a dialogue where we speak with God and we tell Him what's on our heart, but we also listen to Him as He speaks back to us through those whispers, through those impressions, through His Word. Prayer is that two-way street that we have, and sometimes those prayers are all about just praising Him for who He is and giving the pouring out your heart to Him about all that He's done for you. And then he says intercessions. Now intercessions, those are specifically the kinds of prayers when we pray for other people. There's an Old Testament illustration of that in the book of Ezekiel. We talk about standing in the gap, where Ezekiel talks about the wall of Jerusalem has been broken down and needs someone to stand in that gap to defend against the enemy as he's trying to come in. That's the kind of intercessory prayer we need. Because you see, all around us there are people who are struggling and the enemy is attacking. And we've got to stand in that gap and we've got to pray against the enemy, but pray for God's strength and healing spiritually for that person. Praying for the needs of our world, praying for the needs of our community, praying for the needs of other people. And then, of course, giving of thanks. This is one of Paul's most often used concepts of prayer because it's so important that we give thanks to the Father, not just in the good times, but in the bad times. We thank Him for all of the things that are working together, whether good or bad, for our good and for His glory. And so Paul says, I want to exhort you, first of all, that you do this. You pray these four kinds of prayers for all men. Now, who's he talking about? He's talking about every person that you know and you don't know. Praying for the lost, praying for the saved, praying for family members, praying for enemies, praying for everybody. He says we pray all of these prayers for all the people around us that God brings into our sphere, our circle of influence. And then look at what he says in verse 2. For kings and all who are in authority. Now I want you to think about this for a minute. because Paul is under the authority of the Roman emperor. And understand, the Roman emperor is not a good person. Nero was guilty of burning people, Christians, as lamps at his garden parties. He would dip them in wax and then burn them to provide light for his garden parties. He was a horrible person who loved to persecute Christians. And yet, Paul says that we're to pray for them. We're to pray for our president, whether we voted for him or not. We're to pray for our Congress, whether we voted for them or not. We're to pray for our governor. We're to pray for all those who are in authority over us. Come back tomorrow and we'll talk about why. Be blessed. Pray.